Round 1. Fight.
Hello everyone and welcome back to a MK11 update video. This, as a disclaimer, won't be an extension of the Spiral Arrow podcast. That's still just a standalone event that I do in my own spare time, but instead I'm thinking of cataloging, dialoguing, and putting up together short videos, at least short clips, of what happens in the Kombat Kast leading up to the release of MK11. Usually I'll be picking up information as I watch with the rest of the world, seeing what exactly is being added, what's being subtracted within the making of the game. Hopefully that one day we can look back on the series and see, we can talk about and discuss some of the things that we would have seen together during each of the individual Kombat Kasts, and generally just summarize and see what has changed, what didn't change, what was a good idea, what was a bad idea. But moving on, I would also like to make one more disclaimer that voice has changed. Probably quite a lot due to the cold. I am quite sick. Unlike 16-bit, I am not taking it so easily. But let's get straight to it. Really, what's gonna happen is I'm just gonna talk about my thoughts and some of the things I saw throughout the Kombat Kast. Sadly, a personal note to myself is that next time I will carry a pen and paper, because some of the things I wanted to talk about in the beginning I have long forgotten, considering that the Kombat Kast was almost an hour 30 minutes, roughly so. So let's, thinking back, Kabal has been revealed, as in the actual character has been shown. We already knew from the reveal event in Los Angeles that Kabal was gonna be the next, and ever since that particular event, opinions about the game amongst me and my colleagues have slowly changed and matured as we discussed more features of the game, the likes of gear, game balance, game speed, and this whole custom variation versus default variation vibe. So we've been having long discussions, but like I said, that's probably for one of the Spiral Arrow podcasts that I should have sometime before the game releases. But anyway, Kabal as a character. Sadly though, the trailer was botched. It was horrendous in the sense that there were technical difficulties throughout the stream, here and there, especially within the trailer, and you think that the most important part of the Kombat Kast, being the reveal of Kabal, would have been done way better than it was. Like, that was a big error on their part, and a really big mistake. But I guess even $1 million studios can make mistakes, you know what I mean? It's not just us poor, or should I say us low-end streamers. But yeah, definitely that was one of my biggest complaints, because in the end my reaction, or at least my reception to Kabal, was very, very low. I was not impressed in any way. Mainly because, one, I've never really been a Kabal enthusiast, and also the technical difficulties just meant that whatever emotions they were trying to invoke at the time just didn't hit home at all. So sadly, I don't really have anything positive to say about Kabal's reveal. Really sad that it had to go down the way it did, even though it's something that couldn't have been planned, I guess. Once something goes wrong, it goes wrong. There's not much you can say. But moving on to how Kabal actually fights, quite a lot of things have changed with all the Kabal variations, which I guess is a good thing. In the sense that, Ed Boon did say that they're bringing back a lot of the legacy characters, which is a good thing, because I feel like that's what Mortal Kombat X didn't have for me personally, was that there was just a whole roster of people I just didn't care about. So maybe, this isn't confirmed in any way, but maybe they took that feedback over the course of MKX and saw that a lot of people didn't like most of the cast. So maybe they did decide that there'll be a lot of legacy in that game, because their franchise was built on these characters. Most of the new people really didn't strike home. They just weren't fun. They weren't really good to look at. They were effective, But sometimes winning isn't the crux of a game. Sometimes I want to have fun. Sometimes I want to be inspired. And let's just say most of the MKX roster was not really inspiring amongst the new characters. So with Cabal, they said this is a long string. This is just the beginning of a long string of returning characters. And they confirmed that the DLC, the Combat Pack, will have more returning characters. They said we're gonna be shocked. So I'm really hype about that. Really hyped to see who are these returning characters. The only thing I have to say, and this is a shout out to my friend Muscleman from the previous Spiral Arrow podcast, is we do not want fucking Striker. Excuse my language, but we do not want Striker. There's nothing more generic than Striker. I don't know. If you disagree with me, that's what the comments are there for. But please, I beg, they're just some characters who were made during a time where what the crux or the gimmick of their character just doesn't age well. It's similar in MKX when I saw Jax. I was like, sure, Jax is an MK character. He kind of by default has to be there. I understand. But this is a man whose sole purpose or his super ability is that he has metallic arms, and that's it. So really, back in the 90s, that could have been cool. That could have been a rendition of what a cyborg could be. But in the modern age and the modern era, it just looks like dated ideology. So they really have to be careful. Bringing back legacy and old characters can go bad. It can feel uninspired, just the same as how Jax, even though I have to support the fellow black man, is just uninspiring in terms of design. What else could we talk about? The UI changed slightly. Maybe excuse me, maybe someone didn't notice this. The UI changed ever so slightly, even though I don't know if anyone noticed it. But when it comes to the stamina, the offensive and defensive gauges now actually have numbered values above them. So I guess I'm not sure if that's something that will make it towards the final build of the game, but of course it's a really good addition, because someone might want to know how close or how far he is to a certain bar being filled. Understanding the values of meter may be a high-end necessity, but it's still a necessity. Shout outs to anyone who knows what a dead OS is, but there are certain situations whereby, let me give you an example. If these numbers didn't exist above the meters, I may start a combo. Maybe I never had 1 bar of offensive meter, and then I'll start a combo not knowing if at the end of the combo will I have enough meter, would I have built enough meter to execute an enhanced special move, or should I say amplified special move at the end of the combo. So having actual numbered values means that I can know for a fact that I am 50 points away from my bar. Chances are by the end of this combo I will have enough bar to get my amplified special move at the end to cash out on my damage. It's not necessarily a traditional DDoS, but same principles apply. You are having to manage your meter ahead of the fact of getting it. The graphics still haven't changed, and I feel like this is the final look that the game will have. There won't really be that many details. Actually, I think in terms of graphical fidelity, that's the game at its finest. And I saw some discrepancies when people were uploading their initial reveal event, or should I say early access gameplays, that there was some graphical differences between the Xbox version and the PS4 version. Not saying that it was anything substantial, but I noticed better depth of field, better contrast values, and the blur effect was much more pronounced in the Xbox version as compared to the PS4. Whether that's a positive or negative, I honestly don't know. And also, as far as I know, the Nintendo Switch version has been delayed till further notice. So whether that happens or it becomes another MKX affair of different versions of the game just not being made all together, the only thing we can get as confirmation is if we see the PC version. And if people remember, the MKX PC version was utter hot trash. It was hot garbage. It was stinking garbage. So as a PC player, if I were to put my 2 cents as to which version of the game will look the best, it would obviously have to be the PC version. How much better, I cannot say. But in terms of graphical fidelity, this is still the same as the reveal event, probably indicating that the look of the game won't change. But considering that we haven't seen the rest of the characters and the rest of the stages, anything we see from now will technically be new. It's just that they kept on showing the exact same stages. So I don't know, you can take that with a grain of salt. Just a few UI changes here and there. We never got to see the menus this time round, only the character select screen very briefly, so there's not much to say about that. Lastly, fair and fine, we could go into a lot of detail as to how Cabal fights and how Geras fights, since those were the 2 characters that were showcased. I feel like I won't dwell too much on that. That footage will be online on YouTube. You can go support NetherRealms by actually watching their content. I won't take away from the great job they did in terms of explaining the characters. I really enjoyed watching and learning. So definitely hit up their channel wherever this footage, the Kombat Kast, is going to be uploaded to, whether it be Twitch or YouTube. Definitely go check out if you want specific details as to how the characters fight. I won't go over that here. Instead, I'm just going to talk about a few game mechanics that apply to all people, and it's just confirmation of stuff we talked about in the previous Spiral Arrow and the reveal event. The situation is like this. In terms of being knocked down, as we knew in the past, you had wake up options similar, actually wake up options exactly like Tekken. Pretty much you have Tekken wake up options. You can wake up and roll, either to the left or to the right, of course, by using your switch stance button. And we now have confirmation that these rolls are completely invincible to all physical attacks, but you can be thrown out of a roll, which is good to know. And if there are any Street Fighter 5 players, it's similar to dealing with characters like Fang, where he has a dash, a slide, which is very quick. It's not invincible to physical attacks, but I mean, it's very good at getting out of gaps. But if you can preemptively predict the move, then you can throw him out of it immediately, similar to other people who have more mobility options, like V-reversals. In other words, you can get through physical attacks, but you can be thrown, and they have recovery at the end. So if you think you're not in range to throw the person, then you can just backdash and hope to catch him on his recovery. Either way, it's your turn if you can get the spacing just right. And then you have your wake up attacks. One is completely invincible, but it's a poke, doesn't lead to any combo. And then you've got one which is your launch, which is not invincible at all, no armor, but you are able to get an extended combo. So then it's the matter of, which wake up option is he going to do and how do I counter it? Because if you feel like maybe he might roll and you decide to throw, you might get hit by one of the wake up attack options. And maybe if you're looking to bait one of the wake up attack options, he might roll. And then you have situations where people aren't doing anything on people's wake ups, or when they are waking up to throw off things, you have meaty throws, meaty attacks, meaty jump ins, various options. So it becomes a rock paper scissors game on people's defense, which is good, because there are certain situations whereby certain video games have very few defensive options on wake up, and you have situations where people just have to wake up and block. There's nothing better to do than just to wake up and block. So in situations like that, not really much of a fan. I like more creative defense where you have options and those options have counters. Now it's rock, paper, scissors. Who can outplay who? It's not a matter of I have no choice, therefore I have to block. I'm not a fan of that at all. And when it comes to just last 2 points that I would like to that stood out to me throughout the cast, like I said, interesting cast, learning a lot of about the game. I had 2 worries when going in. My first worry was the pacing of the game, and my second worry was reused assets. So in terms of priority and should I say what's more important than what, I would like to talk about reused assets first, because I feel like There's nothing new under the sun, but it's always good to point out when people are now just reusing assets. So for example, we saw in the previous reveal event, we had Sonya using Cyborg's projectile attacks from the air. We had Scarlet using Shinnok's Mimic and a few other special moves that have already been used by other characters, whether it be in other games or the same franchise. Like I said, it's really hard to come up with something new now. There's so many ways you can throw a projectile, there's so many ways you can attack. At this point, we're running on straws. So it's good to see that they implement some old animations, bringing back nostalgia. But you have to be careful. I've already noticed quite a few before even playing the game. So when the game does finally release, how many more reused assets am I going to find in the game? And is that a good thing or a bad thing? I honestly don't know. But it's up to the player at this point to decide for themselves whether, seeing Cabal using Hellboy's air dash all the time is a good thing, considering you already played Hellboy in Injustice 2. Do you really want to play Hellboy again in MK11? I don't know. Maybe I'm just overthinking things, because this isn't new. This is common amongst a lot of games, not just fighting games. It's common in anything. The only difference between plagiarizing and referencing is that in one situation you're blatantly stealing, and in the other you're acknowledging that you never made this. You're just using someone else's assets, or maybe you're reusing old assets, whether you own them or not. So in anything, whether it be literature, art, whatever, you name it, nothing new under the sun. This is a saying we all know. And lastly, I was scared of the pacing of the game. A lot of people were concerned, at least a lot of my friends and colleagues were saying that, is this just going to be another Injustice? I would like to state this now, plain and simple. I am not an Injustice fan in any way. I despise the franchise. I don't like it, and I honestly don't even play it. Don't even own a copy of the game. Never will. And my biggest concern was that MK was losing its identity since they were incorporating. Fair and fine, in terms of development, if you do something good somewhere else. So in the case of NetherRealms, they were innovating new ideas in Injustice, and they are good ideas. Take example, Interactables. They are good ideas. And it doesn't make sense to just leave them there and, incorporate them into Mortal Kombat in a unique way. So it's like, sure, you can incorporate a lot of things, you can integrate new and fresh ideas from other franchises into this one, but watch out that it doesn't end up losing its identity. So amongst all the problems that I was discussing with my friends, all the things that we are very worried about, one of the key issues I had was that maybe Mortal Kombat had lost its pacing. Maybe it would be a bit more Injustice, maybe it would be a bit too slow for my liking. But when I saw them play, it was 18-bit playing in the Kombat Kast, I actually saw fast-paced gameplay. Even though it's a much more tactical, a much slower game overall, if you can make your decisions quickly, the game can still move very fast, and I was very happy to see that. Whether that continues, whether that's just my perception or my imagination, I honestly can't tell you for now. I would have to see more gameplay, and I can only give you a verified point of view when I get my hands on the game itself. But until then, I can't really give you a through and through answer and say this game moves this quick or this slow. But just watching them, I enjoyed that completely. And that pretty much was my biggest gripe. When I saw it, I was like, this game really looks good. It's got a few things here and there, but the pacing, I wasn't too sure about the pacing. And finally, the gripe of all my discussions most of the time, custom variations versus default variations. Like I said, initially I thought they were marketing the game, saying that the new thing for the variation system is creating your own. and then hopefully that they would balance the game according to that. Then the reveal event showed that there were actual default variations, and then now in the Kombat Kast they were kind of just talking of custom variations only in terms of their discussions, but then they were using a lot of defaults as well. I feel like in that regard, NetherRealms, even though they've already stated that custom variations won't work for competitive play due to balance issues, understandably, even though I still feel like the game could have still been balanced around custom variations, still, either way, it's like, make up your mind. Are we using defaults? Are we using customs? You know what I mean? In this case, it feels like they're trying to still market the custom variations because that's all they ever talk about. No one really talks much about the defaults, but we know they exist. I don't know, it's leaving a bitter taste in my mouth where it's like, guys, let's just market, let's have one voice. Because when the game comes out, a lot of people would have heard all this talk about all these different and fun ways of making your own variations. And then it's all about the defaults in the tournaments, bro. It's all about the defaults. And will that hurt their perception of the game after launch? Considering they would have bought the game, will they then return it because it's not really what they hoped for? I can't tell. But at this point, I'm now just grasping on straws. Custom and default variations, I don't know. That's a discussion I would actually love to have with people in the community. But until then, thanks for listening to this update on the MK11 first Kombat Cup, Kombat Kast of 2019. It was enjoyable. Hopefully, next time we'll get to see more. And thanks a lot. I will see you soon.
Much more than a senseless war, another generation that was misinformed. With technique, I let this knock while we walk in with headphones on. So it's hard to admit I'm wrong.